Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barely a month after the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, the community of Highland Park joined the ranks of those that have experienced the uniquely American epidemic of mass shootings. While the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was a critical step in addressing the problem, we must now turn to the issue of unfettered civilian access to military-style assault weapons and the laws that enable them to be obtained. Again, these are weapons designed for the battlefield, not hunting, not communities. These are assault weapons, not pistols. The threat posed by these instruments of slaughter is robbing our communities of safe spaces. People should not have to live in fear of what happened in Uvalde and Highland Park. We owe it to all Americans who have been impacted by senseless gun violence over the years to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Now, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act will provide $750 million in funding to support crisis intervention services, including state red flag laws. We've begun to touch on it earlier in the hearing. Now, these laws allow community members like families, police officers, and doctors to petition judges to issue firearm restraining orders for individuals who they believe pose a threat to themselves or others. Robert Crimo exemplified many questionable characteristics that should have made him unfit for gun ownership. For example, Highland Park Police responded to an incident in 2019 where Crimo made threats against his family. It's documented. They confiscated 16 knives, a dagger, and a sword, and ultimately filed a report declaring him a clear and present danger. Between April and September of 2019, he reportedly attempted suicide, threatened to kill his family, and told police that he had been depressed and was using drugs. Crimo also made social media posts glorifying mass shootings. Signs were there. Yet despite all this, he was approved for a license and purchased several firearms, including the semi-automatic rifle he used to carry out his attack on 4th of July. Now, this likely is not the only instance in which red flag laws should have been invoked, but weren't. In the first 2 years in which Illinois' red flag law was in effect, only 53 firearm restraining orders were filed, with nearly half of them coming from a single suburban county outside Chicago. In 2020 and 2021, judges issued only 115 restraining orders, less than 5 per month statewide. My question, Mayor Rodering, I want to thank you for your testimony and for your leadership during this devastating time for your community. Our hearts go out to you. Now, although we know that red flag laws save lives, their usefulness is limited to the extent that people actually know about them. What suggestions do you have for promoting awareness of the purpose and applicability of these laws so that they are more effective?
I appreciate the efforts of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act and the willingness to recognize that those closest to our potential shooters are best at assessing their risk, but a burden is placed on them. I agree that there's an opportunity to move forward to stop people from being able to access FOIDs and access weapons, but at the end of the day, those weapons, and particularly these assault weapons, just shouldn't be available, period. All of these stopgaps are excellent efforts and we support them, but let's be clear. The differentiating factor between the U.S. and the rest of the world is assault weapons are available. So yes, red flags we need to promote, we need to show the world that this is available, but we're putting a burden on people who may already be dealing with the difficulties of having a mentally ill family member, trying to work through that balance of keeping them safe and keeping themselves safe. It's important to have red flag laws, But we need to get rid of combat weapons.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. And that's where as much great work that was done to pass this bipartisan measure, we need to continue the fight to ban assault weapons,
Right.
to ban large capacity magazines. I agree, couldn't agree more. But the fact that we did take these steps, as skeptical as some people may have been at the beginning, well, it's not the ban, but there is a lot to be said for enhanced background checks, even if it's for buyers under 21. I wish it was for everybody, nationally. The investments in mental health. But the red flag laws, they're not the complete solution in and of themselves, but they will help save lives if implemented more broadly. Not every state has their own laws, and it's contingent upon public awareness that they exist. So look forward to some follow-up with you and the other witnesses on how to better implement and raise awareness about them. Thank you,
I think
Mr.
it's
Chair.
important to
Thank you.
state, my police did everything right.
Yep.
And they followed the rules, and they tried everything that they had at their disposal to make sure that these weapons weren't able to be obtained, and yet, here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator